This story is titled, My Fiancé Cheated on Me with My Brother 1 week before our wedding and got pregnant. 2 years later, the baby isn't his. And now he wants to reconcile. All right, chat. Buckle up because this one made me stop scrolling. We got a 12-year relationship, a $34,000 wedding, a fiancé who treated loyalty like a subscription service, and a brother who forgot what the word brother means. You already know how this ends. Let's get into it. He starts off by saying, Hi Reddit, so I, 30 male, work as a project estimator for a commercial general contractor out of the Raleigh-Durham area in North Carolina. Basically, I price jobs for a living, and I read cancellation clauses the way most people read menus. Remember that. It matters later. So I met my ex-fiancée Marin when we were both freshmen at NC State. She was in communications. I was doing construction management. We started dating sophomore year, and honestly, from the outside, we probably looked like one of those couples that just works. 12 years together by the time it all blew up. 12 years. That's longer than most marriages last. Marin ran our social life like a project schedule. She picked which friends we hung out with, which events we showed up to. If I pushed back, she'd just go quiet until I ended up apologizing for a boundary I hadn't even finished setting. Classic stuff. My older brother Caleb is 2 years ahead of me. Insurance adjuster. Lives about 40 minutes away in a townhouse he bought after his last relationship fell apart. We were tight growing up. Not in some movie way, but in that way where you just trust somebody, because they've been in the foxhole with you since day one. When I was 11 and busted my collarbone jumping off the shed roof on a dare, Caleb carried me inside. Didn't tell mom how it happened, just said I fell. That was the deal. I proposed to Marin in October, about 2.5 years ago. Took her to Wrightsville Beach on a weekend trip and did the whole sunset thing because she'd mentioned once, we were watching some rom-com on Netflix, that she thought beach proposals were the only ones that weren't corny. So I listened. I always listened. She said yes, cried, called her mom before we even got off the beach, posted a ring photo to Instagram within 8 minutes. Yeah, I checked later. 8 minutes. Ring still wet from the ocean mist. She wasn't celebrating an engagement. She was filing a press release. We started planning fast. Marin wanted a spring wedding, late April, which gave us like 6 months. That's tight but doable if you stay on top of vendors. I'm a project estimator, so timelines are literally what I do. I built a spreadsheet, tracked every deposit, every contract, every cancellation clause. The whole package came in around $34,000. Venue, catering, photographer, DJ, florist, efficient, all of it. We split it 60-40 because I made more. By the time everything went sideways, I had about $22,000 of my own money dumped into a wedding that was never going to happen. Here's where the red flags started showing up, even though I didn't call them that at the time. About 2 months after the engagement, Marin's phone went from sitting on the kitchen counter to being permanently face down and glued to her hand, including in the shower. Twice she told me she was visiting her college friend Britt in Charlotte for the weekend, and both times she came back with no photos, no stories, none of the usual Marin recap. I noticed, but I didn't snoop. 12 years of trust doesn't just go away because someone starts bringing their phone into the bathroom, but it should have. The other thing was Caleb. He started skipping family dinners. My mom does Sunday dinner almost every week. Nothing crazy, just pot roast or whatever she's in the mood for. Starting around December, he missed 3 straight, then 4. Said work was busy. And look, insurance adjusters do get slammed during storm season, but storm season in North Carolina is summer and fall, not December. I texted him once. You good, man? Haven't seen you in a minute. He sent back a thumbs up. That was it. Our whole brotherhood reduced to a single yellow thumb. So there I was. 6 months into the engagement. Fully planned wedding. $22,000 already gone. And a fiancé who smiled in my face every day while doing something behind my back that was about to blow my entire life apart. But the thing is, I'm a numbers guy. And the numbers weren't adding up. It was about 2 weeks before the wedding. I was going through our joint credit card, tagging wedding charges in the budget spreadsheet, and spotted something weird. $38 at a restaurant in Holly Springs. That's 10 minutes from Caleb's townhouse and 45 in the wrong direction from Charlotte, where Marin said she'd been that weekend. A few other charges kept popping up near his zip code too. None of them anywhere close to the Charlotte route she kept claiming. So I did what I do when a sub's numbers don't match the scope of work. I ran a full audit. Checked her odometer. Charlotte's a 340-mile round trip. She'd claimed 4 visits since January, 1,360 miles. Her car logged maybe 380 extra. Caleb's place round trip? 50 miles. 4 months at 50 each lined up perfectly. The math wasn't just off. It told a completely different story that ran straight through my brother's zip code. So yeah, that's what happened. And over the next 6 days, I moved like a guy taking apart a building from the inside without touching the outside walls. Day 1. Talk to a lawyer. Small civil litigation office near Briar Creek. $300 flat for the consult. Told him everything. He said document it all and lock down my assets. Day 2. Pulled my $3,200 out of the joint wedding fund and moved it to a new account at a different bank. Took photos of the engagement ring next to a ruler and matched it against the original receipt and the insurance policy. Day 3. Confirmed the apartment lease was only in my name. Marin was never added because she had a collections hit on her credit, and the landlord didn't want the risk. At the time, she was embarrassed about it. Now it was the single best piece of paperwork I'd ever filed. I copied every wedding contract, highlighted every cancellation clause, figured out my max losses and total exposure, and put everything into a folder I labeled Wedding Cancellation Costs. I told my buddy Terrence, best man, known him since freshman year, that I might need his guest room soon. He didn't ask why, just said the key was under the mat. I went home, sat in the living room, waited. Marin was already on the couch when I walked in. TV off, phone nowhere. Just sitting there staring at the wall like somebody had unplugged her. She said we needed to talk. I'll give her this. She didn't try to ease into it. She just said, I've been sleeping with Caleb since January, and I'm pregnant. She sat me down like she was about to wreck my life. She didn't know I'd already saved it. I didn't flinch, didn't raise my voice, just looked at her and said, I know. 2 words. Watch the color drain right out of her face. She kept explaining anyway, like an explanation was going to change anything. It started the night of our engagement party. My parents hosted it in Apex. I'd been giving a toast. Actually, let me tell you what I said, because this part matters. I was standing there to my family, mom, dad, and especially Caleb, the guy who carried me inside when I broke my collarbone and never told a soul how it happened. There's nobody I trust more to stand next to me on the biggest day of my life. To my brother. I remember my dad tearing up. I remember Caleb nodded along with this tight little smile. And I now know that while I was saying those words, Marin was on the back porch 30 feet away, texting the brother I'd just toasted, starting the whole thing during my own speech about loyalty. After the party, the texting got worse. By January, they were actually meeting up. I asked how many times. A handful. I'd later find out it was 15, maybe 20 times over 4 months. A handful. Like counting reps at the gym. I asked if Caleb knew she was telling me. Yeah, apparently they'd agreed it was the right thing to do before the wedding. How noble. Couldn't stop hooking up for 4 months, but they managed to coordinate a confession schedule. Beautiful teamwork. Pause. There's a name for what she just pulled. Burden transfer. She didn't confess out of guilt. She confessed so Dom would be the one to cancel the wedding. That way she gets to tell everyone he couldn't forgive me instead of, I destroyed a 12-year relationship for his brother. Last act of control disguised as honesty. Back to it. Last question. Is it his? She said yes, about 7 weeks along. I got up, went to the bedroom, pulled out the fireproof lockbox. Ring was already inside. I'd moved it 2 days earlier when she left it on the bathroom counter. Receipt, insurance docs, appraisal photos, all of it. She hadn't even noticed. People don't check the inventory when they think they own the building. Told her she had until Friday to move her stuff out. Lease was in my name. She started doing that quiet crying thing, chin trembling, big eyes, looking at you like a puppy that got caught chewing the couch. I'd seen that face 100 times. Used to work on me. Didn't anymore. Grabbed my keys and drove to Terrence's place. He opened the door, looked at my face, and just went, what happened? Wasn't even a question. Told him everything. He didn't say much. Handed me the spare key and told me to stay as long as I needed. That night, around 1 a.m., I drove to Caleb's townhouse. Parked in the lot, left the engine running. Just sat there staring at the light in his bedroom window, with my hand on the door handle for a solid 30 seconds. I knew exactly why I was there, and exactly what I wanted to do. But I'm a numbers guy, and I ran the numbers on what a felony assault charge would actually cost me. The bond, the record, my career, the satisfaction to consequence ratio. It didn't pencil out. He wasn't worth the line item. Put the truck in reverse. Drove back to Terrence's. That's the night I stopped being Caleb's brother and started being his creditor. Next morning, I ran the cancellation plan I'd already built. Most deposits were just gone. The DJ was the only one who gave a full refund because he was my college roommate's cousin and just said, man, take it. Life's too short. I ate about $14,600 in losses. Every receipt, every email, every contract, already in the folder. Already sorted. Marin blew up my phone that day. 12 texts. I didn't respond to a single one. Screenshotted the last one where she said we should talk about this like adults, and dropped it in the folder. Caleb? Dead silent. Guess shame makes people disappear. By Friday, she'd moved her stuff out. I went home to an apartment that smelled like her perfume with screw holes in the walls where her art used to be. Sat on the floor in the empty living room eating cold pizza off a paper plate. Best meal I'd had in a week. This is where it got ugly. Not the breakup. That part was clean on my end. It got ugly because of everybody else. My parents found out within 48 hours. Caleb told them. Whatever version he gave was one heck of a spin job. Because when my mom called, she wasn't sympathetic. She was managing me. Said Caleb felt terrible, and they were dealing with a really difficult situation. I told her I wasn't interested. She said I was being reactive. I said I was being accurate. 2 weeks later, she begged me to come to Sunday dinner. Just her and Dad. No Caleb. No Marin. So I went. Walked in and knew immediately it was a setup. Not because Caleb was there. He wasn't. But the whole house had been rearranged around Marin. Prenatal vitamins on the kitchen counter, a baby's first-year book sitting on the coffee table, and a framed ultrasound photo on the mantel, right next to my senior portrait. My dad handed me a sweet tea. These things are complicated, son. My mom started going on about how Caleb was really struggling and how Marin's pregnancy had been rough. Then she just casually drops that she'd been going over to help them out twice a week. I set the tea down, looked at the ultrasound, looked at my mom. You put that photo on your mantel. She blinked. It's my grandchild, Dominic. It's a trophy from the woman who cheated on your son. And you framed it. Dad started with the let's all calm down thing. I was already standing up. Didn't slam the door on my way out. The silence handled that for me. 3 weeks after the breakup, my mom called to tell me Caleb and Marin were getting married. Small ceremony. In the backyard at my parents' house. Same backyard where I used to shoot hoops with Caleb growing up. Same house where Marin and I had our engagement party. And my parents were hosting it. I said, if you go through with this, I'm done. Not just with Caleb and Marin, with all of you. Mom started crying. Dad grabbed the phone and told me I was being extreme. I said, you're hosting a wedding for the woman who cheated on me with my brother in your house a month after she blew up my life. There's nothing extreme about walking away from that. They went through with it anyway. Small ceremony, maybe 20 people. I heard about it from my cousin Derek, who refused to go. Called me the morning after and told me Marin wore white. White. I almost laughed. At least she's consistent. Recycled the boyfriend? Might as well recycle the color palette. Pause. I need you to understand what just happened. North Carolina is one of only a handful of states that still recognizes alienation of affection as a civil claim, meaning you can literally sue someone for interfering in your marriage or relationship. Now, Dom wasn't married yet, so that doesn't apply here. But the principle is the same. This man's parents chose the woman who destroyed their son over the son she destroyed. They hosted it. They fed the guests. They watched her walk across their backyard in white. That's not keeping the peace. That's a cosign. Back to it. Derek was the one person in my family who never tried to play both sides. Not because he's some saint. Dude had been through his own version of this. His college girlfriend cheated with his roommate years back, and his own parents told him to get over it. So when my situation happened, Derek didn't need the summary. He already knew the plot. After that, I went full no contact. Parents, Caleb, Marin, all of them. Changed my number. Deleted every social media account. Told my circle, Terrence, couple work friends, Derek, my aunt. No updates, no gossip, nobody playing peacemaker. Some people respected that. Some didn't. Marin tried 3 times that first month. First was through a mutual friend asking for closure. Shut that down in one text. Then she showed up at my apartment, pregnant enough to be showing. I walked right past her, unlocked my door, went inside. Didn't say a word. Third time, she sent a handwritten letter. 3 pages. 1 line was showing through the envelope. I know sorry doesn't cover it, but I need you to know that, and it disappeared into the fold. Didn't open it. Put it in the folder. Meanwhile, Marin was telling everyone her version. Spun it as a love story. She and Caleb fell in love unexpectedly. She tried to fight it, but couldn't. Never mentioned the 4 months of lies. Posted throwback photos on Instagram with captions about unexpected blessings. Just erased me from the story like I'd never existed. She redecorated Caleb's townhouse with the exact color scheme she'd picked for our wedding. Dusty blue and cream. Recycled the boyfriend and the vision board. At least she's eco-friendly, I guess. But most people in our circle weren't buying it. Derek started quietly filling family members in on the real timeline. I specifically told him not to, but Derek's got his own issues with people who rewrite history. The tide turned. My aunt stopped coming to Sunday dinners. 2 cousins unfollowed them. My uncle called my dad and told him he was disgusted. And through all of that, I just did the only thing I could control. Went to work. came home, tracked every dollar, saved every document, and I waited. I threw myself into work, picked up overtime, took on a bid for a hospital expansion nobody else wanted. But I also went to work on the situation. My lawyer already had the folder. He said since we had a clear paper trail showing who paid what, I had a shot in small claims for her share. Small claims in North Carolina caps at $10,000, and getting money out of someone with nothing is its own nightmare. But sometimes a demand letter shakes something loose without having to go to court. Demand letter went out in June. Total, $8,200. Marin's share of lost deposits plus the engagement ring. In North Carolina, if the engagement gets broken because of the person who received the ring comes back. She'd never returned it. Marin's response? She had her mom call my lawyer's office saying the letter was harassment. My lawyer sent back a polite reply explaining that a civil demand letter is not harassment. Then we waited. I was rebuilding in the meantime. Renewed my lease, repainted the bedroom, hit a warehouse liquidation sale for furniture, picked up a weekend side gig doing residential estimates for a buddy's remodeling company. Extra $600 to $800 a month, which helped fill the hole Marin had blown in my savings. Around this same time, a younger guy at work, junior estimator, been on my team about 6 months, came in one Monday, looking like somebody had run him over. Over lunch, he tells me his girlfriend left him for some dude in her grad program and cleaned out their joint account on the way out. I didn't give him a speech, just emailed him a blank copy of my tracking spreadsheet and said, document everything. Receipts, texts, account statements. Even if you never do anything with it, you'll feel better knowing it's there. He looked at me like I'd thrown him a life raft. August. Another surprise. Call from Caleb. First time he'd reached out since everything happened. No apology, just, Dom, drop the demand letter. Marin's stressed and it's not good for the baby. I let the silence sit for a good 5 seconds. Then, the demand letter is between Marin and my attorney. If she wants to deal with it, she can go through proper channels. Come on, man. Don't be like that. Caleb, you slept with my fiancée for 4 months and married her in our parents' backyard. Don't tell me how to be. Click. Good. September. I filed in small claims. Filing fee was $96. Filed for $8,200. Her share of lost deposits plus the ring, which appraised at $4,100. I put together my case like it was a $2 million project bid. Every receipt in order, every text printed out, every contract with the cancellation clauses highlighted. If this was a construction project, I would have passed inspection on the first walkthrough. Marin got served at Caleb's townhouse. Court date set for November. She never filed a response. In North Carolina, if you don't respond to a small claims case, you're basically asking for a default judgment. Pause. Quick legal reality check for anyone who thinks ignoring a court summons makes it go away. It doesn't. In small claims, if you get served and don't file a written response, the judge can rule against you without hearing a single word from your side. You don't even have to lose the argument. You just have to not show up for it. Marin didn't just lose this case. She forfeited it before it started. Back to it. Derek kept me in the loop on Caleb's household. Marin had quit her marketing job, pregnancy complication, so now she had zero income and was fully depending on Caleb. And Caleb, making about $58,000 a year, was suddenly covering 2 people, plus a mortgage, plus the stress of a woman who was used to getting whatever she wanted. I didn't react, just filed it away. The picture was getting clearer every day. Court day came the second week of November. I showed up in a collared shirt and slacks, folder in hand, 15 minutes early. Marin walked in 5 minutes late with Caleb right behind her, like his being there was supposed to mean something. It didn't. The magistrate was this no-nonsense woman, probably mid-50s, told me to go first. I set the folder down, 2 inches thick, tabbed, color-coded. Watched Marin's eyes follow it as I cracked it open. Something shifted in her face. That folder was thicker than anything she'd prepped, mostly because she hadn't prepped anything. I walked her through all of it. The engagement, the shared fund, the deposits, the contracts, the ring. Had a receipt for every dollar. The cost breakdown in a table. Text messages where Marin confirmed she knew what things cost and agreed to our split. The magistrate flipped through my stuff, stopped on the spreadsheet, looked up at me over her glasses. This is very thorough. I do this for a living, Your Honor. Then she turned to Marin. Do you have any records? Receipts? Proof of what you put in? Anything in writing? Nothing. Marin looked at Caleb. Caleb stared at the floor. The magistrate waited a full 5 seconds. In a courtroom, 5 seconds of dead silence feels like a building settling into its foundation. Marin's defense was that the breakup was mutual, and I was being vindictive. No paperwork, no receipts. When the magistrate asked if she'd returned the ring, she said she didn't think she had to since the wedding was canceled. The magistrate goes, in North Carolina, An engagement ring given in contemplation of marriage is a conditional gift. If the engagement is broken due to the donee's actions, the ring is to be returned. Judgment: $7,400 my way. Deposit losses plus ring value, minus a small offset for shared household stuff. Not everything I'd lost, but it was on the record. And in my line of work, what's on the record is what counts. On the way out, Caleb grabbed my shoulder in the hallway. I looked down at his hand like it was something stuck to my shirt. He pulled it back quick. Dom, this whole court thing wasn't necessary. Neither was any of this. Kept walking. Marin didn't pay. Not in 30 days, not in 60. Filed for wage garnishment through my lawyer. Cost another $200, but she was unemployed, so there was nothing to garnish. So we filed a judgment lien with the county instead. Just sits there on her financial record like a sleeping dog, waiting for her to try to buy property or refinance anything. Quiet. Patient. The junior estimator stopped by my desk around then. Said the spreadsheet worked. He'd gotten about $2,800 back through his bank's fraud department because he kept the records. Shook my hand and said, I owe you one. Sometimes the best thing you can do with your own wreckage is hand somebody else the blueprint. But the real crack in the whole thing had nothing to do with money. About 3 months after court, mid-February, so almost a year since the breakup, Caleb texted me. 5 words. Can you meet me tonight? Almost didn't answer. But something about the way he said it was different. No demands, no deflection, just a question that felt like it had been typed and deleted a dozen times before he finally sent it. Met him at a diner off Highway 54. He was already sitting in a booth, holding a coffee that looked like it went cold an hour ago. He looked terrible. Not the put-together insurance guy with the firm handshake and the pressed shirts. He looked hollowed out. He didn't open with an apology. He opened with something I wasn't expecting at all. The baby isn't mine. I just sat there, waited. He told me everything. Baby came in late November. A girl. Blood type came back AB. Caleb's type O. Marin's type A. Pause. Quick biology lesson for those of you who were on your phones during genetics class. Blood type O means you carry 2 recessive alleles. You can only pass on an O. Type A means you pass on either an A or an O. So the only possible baby blood types from a type O father and type A mother are A or O. Period. AB means there's a B allele in that child that neither Caleb nor Marin could have provided. Blood types don't negotiate, chat. They don't care about your story. They're just math. And the math said, Sir, that is not your daughter. Back to it. DNA test right before Christmas made it official. Not his. He was sitting across from me, and for the first time since we were kids, I watched my brother break down. Not the quiet kind either. The ugly kind. The kind where other people in the diner start looking real hard at their plates. I sat there running the math. Marin cheated on me with my brother. Got pregnant by somebody else. Blew up my engagement. Married my brother in our parents' backyard. Cost me $14,600. Refused to give my ring back. Lost in court. And the kid wasn't even his. I didn't celebrate. Didn't gloat. Honestly, I felt nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction. Just confirmation that none of this was ever about love. Not for her. It was about control. About keeping options open and making sure she always had somebody locked in while she kept one foot out the door. I'm sorry, Dom. First time he'd ever said it. I'm so sorry. I looked at him for a long time. Then I just said, I know. Left a 10 on the table and walked out. That wasn't forgiveness. It was just an acknowledgement. There's a difference. The fallout was nuclear. Caleb moved out of his own townhouse within a week. Marin was left with no income, no husband, no confirmed father for her baby, and a judgment lien on her record. My parents, who'd spent a year propping her up, were apparently blindsided. They shouldn't have been. They knew who she was. They just didn't care until it happened to Caleb, too. My mom called for the first time in months. Didn't pick up. She left a voicemail saying she was sorry, that her and my dad made a mistake, that Caleb was torn up. I saved that voicemail. Put it in the folder. Not for legal reasons. Just because I wanted a record of the exact moment they finally admitted I was right. Never called back. Here's what people don't get about revenge. The kind that actually feels good doesn't happen in one moment. It's not a slap or a speech or a mic drop. It's more like building something, one brick at a time until the whole thing's standing, and the other person realizes they're stuck inside. After the paternity thing came out, everything moved fast for everybody else. Not for me, though. I just kept going. Got promoted to senior estimator. Bumped to $82,000 plus a project bonus structure. Picked up a used 2019 Tacoma. Paid cash from overtime I'd been stacking. Moved into a better apartment in North Hills with a balcony and real counter space. The rebuild was quiet, steady, and entirely mine. Caleb filed for an annulment. In North Carolina, annulments are hard. You gotta prove fraud. His lawyer argued that Marin lied about the baby's paternity, and that's what got him to marry her. Court agreed. Annulment went through in March. Once it was official, Caleb was off the hook. No alimony, no splitting anything. Marin had zero legal claim. 30 days to get out. Desperate Marin was the worst version. She called my parents nonstop crying. My mom, still feeling guilty, let her move into the guest room. So now Marin was living in my parents' house. Same house she got married in. Same house I grew up in. Then she got a hold of my new number. Pretty sure she went through my mom's phone and started texting me. Apologies, regret, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. Blocked her. But she wasn't done. May rolls around and she shows up at my job site. Commercial build-out in Cary. I'm in a half-framed conference room going over drywall specs when a laborer tells me there's a woman in the parking lot asking for me. My site super was in the trailer with a clear view of the lot. Guys in hard hats everywhere. Walked out. There she was, leaning on a Honda Civic that had seen way better days. Baby on her hip. She looked thinner, tired. Smiled at me and said, "Hey, stranger." I didn't answer right away. Looked down at the spec sheet in my hand, wrote something in the margin, then looked up at her like I'd just noticed she was standing there. "You can't be here. This is an active job site. No hard hat, no clearance, and there's a liability issue with the baby." The smile dropped. She wasn't expecting the work voice. Started going into this thing about how she'd been thinking a lot and how I was the one who got away. Behind me, I heard the trailer door creak open. Couple guys up on the scaffold suddenly got real interested in the parking lot. One of them muttered something to the other, and they both just shook their heads. "Marin, I have a judgment against you for $7,400 that you haven't paid. You want to talk? Talk to my lawyer." Her face turned red. Baby started fussing. "That's really how you want to do this? This is how you did this. I'm just finishing the punch list." Went back inside. My site super met me at the trailer door. "That the one?" I nodded. He shook his head. "Some people don't read the specs before they sign the contract." First time I'd laughed in months. Called my lawyer after. He said if she came back we could file for a no-contact order. Told him to get it ready. July. Marin tried to refinance a car loan. Lender pulled her credit, found the lien, couldn't get approved without clearing it. Stuck. She called my lawyer's office wanting to work out a payment plan. He called me. I said, "Full amount, no discount, $200 a month till it's done." She agreed. First payment came in August. $200 a month every month on the 15th. A standing reminder that consequences don't come with a cancellation clause. It was a Saturday in December, almost 2 years since the breakup. I was at a spot in downtown Durham with Terrence and Derek watching a college football game. There was this one play where the kicker shanked it so bad the commentators didn't even know what to say for like 3 seconds. Anyway, I was in an okay place. Not great, not healed or whatever, just stable. That kind of calm you get when you've done the math on your own life and the numbers finally work out. Phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text. "Dom, it's Caleb. I'm using a friend's phone. I need to talk to you. I know I don't deserve it. I'm outside Motorco. 2 blocks away." Terrence saw my face. "What?" Showed him the text. He shook his head. "You don't have to." "I know, but I want to." Walked over. Cold enough to see my breath. Street was quiet except for bass thumping from a venue down the block. Caleb was by the entrance, hands jammed in his jacket pockets. He looked older, not dignified, drained. Like the last 2 years took more out of him than me. Straightened up when he spotted me. Opened his mouth, closed it. "Thanks for coming." I waited. He went into it. Said he knew he'd messed up bad. The annulment was the worst experience of his life. He'd learned a lot about himself. Wanted his brother back. Whole thing sounded rehearsed. When he finally stopped talking, I said what I'd been sitting on. "Caleb, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Every time you picked up the phone, every time you drove over to see her, every time you sat across from me at Sunday dinner and said nothing. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern." He tried to cut in. I kept going. "You married her in mom and dad's backyard. You stood where I was supposed to stand. And when the DNA test came back and you found out the kid wasn't yours, that's when you finally got what betrayal feels like. Not when you did it to me. When it happened to you." He stared at the ground. "You remember when I broke my collarbone off the shed roof? You carried me inside. Didn't tell mom. Just said I fell." I stopped for a second. "That's the guy I lost. And I don't think he's coming back." His jaw went tight. "You had 100 chances to be my brother. Every dinner. Every text. Every time you drove past her exit and could have just kept going. You chose her every single time. That's not a mistake, Caleb. That's who you are." Something moved behind his eyes. Maybe the kid who once carried his little brother inside. Maybe just the shame of knowing that kid was gone. Either way, it hit. So no, I said. I don't want to make things right. I don't owe you that. I don't owe Mom and Dad that. And I definitely don't owe Marin that. You all made your choices. I made mine. So that's it? That's it. He stood there a few more seconds waiting for me to crack, offer something. When I didn't, he just nodded slow, turned around, and left. I watched him walk away, not because I was feeling sentimental or anything, just to make sure he actually left. Old habits. Walked back to the spot, sat down, picked up my drink. Terrence looked at me. Good? Good. Derek tapped the table and didn't say anything. Sometimes that's the perfect thing. Didn't bring up the $7,400 still being paid off at $200 a month. Didn't mention the lien that's going to follow Marin's credit for another 5 years. Didn't mention the annulment sitting on Caleb's public record, or the fact that the family they blew mine up to build lasted shorter than some gym memberships. Results spoke for themselves. 3 weeks later, Mom sent a Christmas card. Didn't open it. Put it in the drawer next to last year's. Not the folder. Folders for evidence. The drawer is for stuff I haven't decided about yet. It's getting full. Last I heard from Derek, Caleb moved into a one-bedroom on the outskirts of Durham. Had to sell the townhouse to cover legal fees and the financial mess Marin left behind. Derek said he looked like a guy who finally did the math and realized the total was never going to add up. Marin? Still in Garner. Still paying me $200 a month. Last month's was 12 days late, though. Haven't decided if I'm going to let that slide or send my lawyer a note about it. The $200 isn't really about the money at this point. It's about the principle that actions have line items, and every line item has a due date. She started seeing some new guy. Met him in a parenting group or something. Didn't ask for details. That's her story now. And me? Signed a contract on a condo last month. 2 bedrooms, small patio, 12 minutes from the office. Did the inspection myself because project estimator, remember? I trust my own numbers more than anybody else's. Ran the comps. Checked the foundation. Found a hairline crack along the east wall. Nothing serious, easy fix, but the kind of thing most buyers wouldn't catch. I caught it. I've learned what happens when you don't check the foundation before you commit. Read every clause in the HOA agreement, and I made sure the only name on the deed was mine. All right, guys, he handled the breakup like a busted job site. Walkthrough, photos, paperwork, claim filed, rebuild started. Marin's still sending $200 a month for the relationship she torched. Caleb's in a one-bedroom doing sad math on his choices. Their parents are stuck in a quiet house wondering why one son ghosted them. The revenge isn't the judgment or the lien. It's that Dom's the only one whose life actually came out on schedule, and he's closing on a condo while everyone else is scrambling. I found my wife's boss, listed as my kid's emergency contact. I stayed silent, called a lawyer, and set them up. What followed was brutal. Hey Reddit, I'm Chester, 39 male. Grab a snack and strap in. This one's a ride. So, I was 40 feet up a utility pole outside Nagani when my phone buzzed in my pocket. January in the Upper Peninsula, wind chill around -15, and I'm strapped into a harness running diagnostics on a transformer that's been giving us grief. Not exactly a great time to check notifications, but the buzz pattern was the school app, Safe Connect, the one Marquette area public schools rolled out 2 years ago so parents could manage emergency contacts, pickup authorizations, field trip permissions. I'd set it to notify me for any changes. Claire always joked that made me the boring parent. I wore it like a badge. I finished the diagnostic, descended, peeled off my outer gloves in the truck, and opened the app. There was an update notification from 3 hours ago. Someone had modified the emergency contact and pickup authorization list for both Elsie and Aaron's accounts. I tapped it expecting to see Claire had added her mother again, or maybe updated a phone number. What I saw instead was a name that made my stomach drop. Wade Mercer, listed as emergency contact number 2. Pickup authorized. Relationship listed as family friend. And there was more. The audit log showed Wade had digitally acknowledged a health office release form in November, authorizing him to pick up Aaron for an off-campus medical appointment. His personal email was attached to the acknowledgement. I stared at that screen, long enough that my fingers started going numb without the outer glove. Wade Mercer was the general manager at Northern Ridge Industrial Supply, the manufacturing plant where Claire had worked as HR director for the past 6 years. I'd met him maybe a dozen times. A couple of those community fundraiser dinners where Wade would shake every hand in the room like he was running for office. He was one of those guys. Mid-40s, silver at the temples, good suits for a plant manager in the UP. I'd never liked him. Couldn't explain why. Sometimes you just get a feeling about a person, and you file it away because you're not the type to start problems over a gut reaction. But this wasn't a gut reaction. This was my children's school records. I scrolled through the audit log. The app tracks every change with timestamps and the account that made the edit. Wade's entry had been added 4 months ago, September, right around the time I'd been pulled for a 10-day storm response deployment downstate after that freak derecho tore through the lower peninsula. I was sleeping in motel rooms and running 16-hour days restoring power to 3 counties. The edit was made from Claire's account, and then the health office release. The audit metadata showed it had been acknowledged from Wade's personal email address. My son had a doctor's appointment in November, one Claire had told me about, but Wade had been the one to take him. I checked my own calendar. November 9th, the second day of another storm call. I'd been in Iron Mountain running a line crew through an ice event. Claire had texted me that night saying Aaron's checkup went fine. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 45 minutes. Engine running, heat blasting, staring at an audit log on a school app. My crew lead radioed twice asking if I was coming back. I told him I was dealing with a family thing. He said, take the afternoon. The thing about discovering something like this is that your brain doesn't process it in order. It processes it in waves. If he's listed as emergency contact, someone had a conversation about it. If he acknowledged a medical release, he was involved in my kids' health care. If he picked up my kids, he drove them somewhere. My kids were in his car. How long? How deep? What else? The next morning, before my shift, I drove to Elsie's school and asked to speak with the front office administrator. Her name was Pam, and she'd known my family since Elsie started kindergarten. I told her I was reviewing the emergency contact list and wanted to confirm who was authorized for pickup. She pulled it up on the district system and read it back to me. Chester Hale, primary. Wade Mercer, secondary. Colleen Hale, tertiary. My mother was third, behind Wade Mercer. I asked Pam if Wade had ever actually picked up either of my kids. She checked the district sign-out logs. Twice. Both times during my storm deployments. Once in October, once in November. Both early dismissals on days Claire was listed as unavailable. I kept my voice level. Pam, I need you to do something for me. Print those records before anything changes, and I need a release hold put on both kids' accounts right now. Any pickup request goes through me directly. Phone confirmation required, no exception. And remove Wade Mercer from the authorized list. Pam nodded. I can do that, Mr. Hale. I'll need you to sign a form updating the authorization. I'll sign whatever you need. She printed the pickup logs, the audit trail, and the emergency contact history. I signed the new authorization form, restricting pickup to myself and my mother only. She gave me a look like she wanted to say something but didn't. In a town like Marquette, everybody knows everybody. And Pam had just watched me find out something she probably already suspected. I walked out of that school office and sat in my truck again. Not shaking, not crying, just sitting there with the kind of knowledge you can't unknow. The man my wife worked for had been picking up my children from school. I didn't go home angry. That's what people expect in these stories. The husband storms in, throws accusations, the wife cries, somebody breaks a plate. That's not what happened. I went to work, climbed poles, ran my drone inspections on a transmission corridor north of Ishpeming, filed my reports, and drove home at 5:15 like any other Tuesday. Claire was in the kitchen. Pork chops, roasted potatoes, green beans. The house smelled good. Elsie was at the table doing math homework. Aaron was in his room. Normal evening. I ate dinner. Helped Elsie with fractions. Watched half a hockey game with Aaron. Around 9, after the kids were in their rooms, I found Claire in the living room scrolling her phone. I sat down across from her and asked one question. Why is Wade listed as an emergency contact for our kids? She didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "Oh, that. I added him months ago as a backup because your mom's number kept going to voicemail. He offered, and I thought it made sense since he's local and has flexible hours." Delivered like a policy explanation. Smooth. Reasonable. I said, he acknowledged a medical release for Aaron. From his own email. Claire nodded. You were downstate. I was in a compliance meeting that ran late. Wade was already helping with pickup that day, so I asked him to handle the appointment authorization. It's not a legal document, Chester. It's a school health office form. Every answer she gave was preloaded. She'd already thought about what I might ask and had a perfectly rational explanation sitting in the chamber. I watched her face while she talked, calm, concerned for me, like I was an employee who'd raised a valid question, and she was walking me through why there was nothing to worry about. The performance was flawless. But here's the thing about being married to someone for 15 years. You know their real face. And I knew this wasn't it. I didn't push. I said, okay, and went to bed. She followed 20 minutes later, slid under the covers, put her hand on my arm. I lay there staring at the ceiling and made a decision. I would not be played. Not by my wife, not by anyone. I wasn't going to snoop through her phone like a desperate man and compromise whatever legal standing I might need later. I was going to be smart about this. Smarter than her. The next morning, I called my sister Tessa before my shift. Tessa's a paralegal at a family law firm in Escanaba, about 2 hours south. She's sharp, blunt, and she doesn't tolerate nonsense from anyone, including me. I told her what I found. She was quiet for about 10 seconds. Then she said, "Don't delete anything. Screenshot everything. The audit log, the timestamps, the pickup records. Email them to yourself and to me. Don't confront her again. And for the love of God, Chester, don't do anything stupid." I told her I already asked Claire about it. She sighed. "How much did you show your hand?" I said, "I just asked the one question." "Good. Keep it at that. She's going to be watching you now, so act normal. I'm going to talk to my boss about a referral for a family attorney up there. Someone local who knows the Marquette County courts." That was the beginning. Just screenshots, a phone call to my sister, and the slow, grinding realization that the woman I'd built my life with had a whole second operation running behind my back, and she was better at hiding it than I ever would have guessed. I underestimated her. I'll own that. I spent the next 2 weeks being careful, keeping records, not reacting, playing the long game like Tessa told me. I thought I had time. Claire moved faster. On a Monday morning, my supervisor Dan called me into the office at the utility yard. He looked uncomfortable. He told me the company had received a formal safety concern regarding my drone certifications and recent inspection work. The complaint alleged I'd been operating UAVs outside approved parameters and suggested my emotional state might be impacting field safety. It was filed anonymously, but it had been routed through a compliance contact at Northern Ridge Industrial Supply, Claire's employer. Dan said the company had to take it seriously. Standard procedure was a desk assignment, pending internal review. I was off field duty and grounded from drone operations until the investigation cleared me. Could take 2 to 4 weeks. I sat in that office and felt the heat rise up through my chest. This was Claire. She'd clocked that I was onto something, and instead of waiting to see what I'd do, she went on offense. Hit my job, my FAA certification, my ability to provide for my kids. She framed it as a safety concern because she knows exactly how compliance systems work. That same week, Tessa called me with worse news. Claire had beaten me to the courthouse. She'd filed for divorce and, in the same motion packet, requested temporary primary custody and a personal protection order. The filing claimed I'd been exhibiting erratic behavior, emotional instability, and had made threatening statements during a domestic dispute. She was requesting supervised visitation only, pending an emergency hearing scheduled for the following week. None of it was true. There was no dispute. There were no threatening statements. I'd asked her one question about a school app and said, "Okay," but Claire had written it up like a crisis incident report, and she'd done it with the precision of someone who writes incident reports for a living. I lost it. Not at Claire, not in front of anyone who mattered. I was in my garage alone, and I put my fist through a piece of drywall behind the water heater. Stood there with plaster dust on my knuckles, breathing hard, feeling every bit of the rage I'd been stuffing down for 2 weeks. Then I called Tessa. She talked me off the ledge in about 90 seconds. "This is what she wants, Chester. She wants you to react so she has evidence. Now listen, her motion is garbage, but we need to respond fast. I talked to Greg Lindqvist in Marquette. He's good. Family law, 20 years, knows the judges. He can file a response by Thursday. You need to meet with him tomorrow." I met Greg the next day. He was a guy in his 50s. He read Claire's motion, read my screenshots of the school app audit log, and said, "She overplayed her hand. There's no police report, no medical documentation, no witness corroboration for any of her claims. And this school app documentation you have is going to be a problem for her story. Her timeline doesn't work." He was right. Claire claimed emotional instability starting in December. The school app changes were made in September. She'd been covering tracks long before I asked a single question. Greg filed a counter motion and a request to preserve all school records and communication logs. He also suggested quietly that if I had any concerns about paternity, now was the time to address it before the custody proceedings advanced. He said it was standard advice in cases like this. When one affair surfaces, you have to consider the possibility that it wasn't the only one, or that it started earlier than the evidence suggests. I'd been thinking about it already, not because I wanted to, because I had to. I ordered 2 DNA testing kits that night, sat on the edge of my bed holding the boxes, and felt sick to my stomach. Elsie has my eyes. Aaron has my jaw. But the doubt was in me now, and I couldn't unfeel it. I collected the samples the next morning during breakfast, told the kids it was for a health screening through my insurance. Aaron shrugged. Elsie asked if it would hurt. I told her it was just a cheek swab. She said, "Cool," and went back to her cereal. I mailed the kits and waited. And for the first time in this whole mess, I was genuinely scared. Not of Claire. Not of losing. Scared that those kids might not be mine, and that everything I'd believed about my family for 14 years was fiction. In Marquette, news travels faster than plow trucks. By the third week, everybody had a version of the story. Claire and I were seen not sitting together at Elsie's basketball game. I was spotted at Greg Lindqvist's office twice. Claire was telling coworkers I was going through a mental health episode, which is a phrase designed to generate sympathy for her and suspicion toward me without saying anything actionable. The kids were absorbing all of it. Aaron came home from school one day and said, "Tyler Brandt told me his mom said you and mom are splitting up." I told him Tyler Brandt's mom should worry about her own business. He gave me a look that was way too old for 14 and said, "Is it true, though?" I told him his mom and I were working through some things. He said, "Is it because of the guy from her work? What made you say that?" I asked. "Well, she talks different when he calls. Like her voice goes up. And she always leaves the room. I'm not dumb, Dad." That one landed hard. My 14-year-old had noticed things I'd missed, or chosen not to see. Elsie was quieter about it, but she'd started sleeping with her door open and asking me every morning if I'd be home after school. She'd also started making her own lunch instead of letting Claire do it. Kid radar is real. They pick up everything, and they show you what they know before they can explain it. The spine moment came on a Thursday. I got a call from the school district office at 2:15. It was Pam. "Mr. Hale, there's a situation. Mrs. Hale is here requesting early dismissal for both children. She says there's a family appointment, but the release hold flagged it, and I'm calling you per your instruction." I was 20 minutes away, running a line inspection near Gwyn. "Keep them in the office. I'm on my way." When I walked into that school lobby, Claire was standing at the front desk with her professional smile locked in place. The smile flickered when she saw me. Behind the counter, Pam and another staff member were watching. "Chester," Claire said, her voice pitched for an audience. "I was just picking up the kids for a dentist appointment. I didn't realize there was a communication breakdown." "There's no appointment," I said. "I checked with Dr. Lindgren's office this morning after Pam called me." The lobby went very quiet. Claire's smile tightened. "There must be some confusion. I scheduled it last week." "No, you didn't. And the release hold stays. If you want to pick up the kids, you call me first. That's how it works now." She stared at me for a long moment. I watched her calculate whether to escalate in front of witnesses and decide against it. "Smart." "Fine," she said, gathering her purse. "We'll discuss this at home." "We'll discuss it through our attorneys," I said. She walked out. Pam gave me a small nod. I signed Elsie and Aaron out myself and took them for pizza. Didn't explain why, just told them plans changed and we were having a dad afternoon instead. Aaron looked at me like he understood more than he was saying. Elsie just wanted extra cheese. It was during the 4th week that I got a phone call from an unknown number. Woman's voice, clipped and direct. "Is this Chester Hale? My name is Kendra Mercer. I'm Wade's ex-wife. We should talk." I almost hung up. Tessa had told me not to engage with anyone connected to the other side without checking with her first. But something in Kendra's voice stopped me. She didn't sound friendly. She sounded like someone with a score to settle. We met at a diner off M28, about halfway between Marquette and Munising. Kendra was sharp-faced, mid-40s, no warmth in her eyes. She ordered black coffee and got right to it. She told me she'd been married to Wade for 11 years. He'd had affairs throughout. She knew about at least 3 women, all connected to his work. The pattern was always the same. He targeted women in positions where he had leverage, subordinates, or direct reports, initiated the relationship under the cover of mentorship or professional development, and maintained it by blending the affair into legitimate business activities, work trips, conference travel, company retreats at a cabin property the company owned near Pictured Rocks. I asked her why she was telling me this. "Because when I divorced him, he buried me," she said. "He had better lawyers, more money, and the whole town thought he was a saint. I got painted as the bitter ex. He got the house. I got a settlement that barely covered my moving costs. I'm telling you because if you're about to go up against him, you need to know what he does. And because if you win, it means I wasn't crazy." She handed me a folder. Inside were printouts, credit card statements showing paired hotel bookings, mileage reimbursement forms from Northern Ridge showing destinations that didn't match any plant business, calendar entries she'd screenshotted before their divorce that showed blocks marked NR Development Retreat on weekends that coincided with her own records of Wade being unreachable, and the company cabin near Pictured Rocks. She had the address, the booking system login her lawyer had never been able to subpoena in time, and records showing it was used regularly outside of any official company event. "This isn't charity," Kendra said. "If your lawyer subpoenas the right records, it all comes out. His pattern, the company's liability for looking the other way. And maybe I finally get to stop being the woman nobody believed." I took the folder. thanked her. She finished her coffee and stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. If your lawyer needs a sworn declaration about Wade's pattern, I'll sign one. And if it goes to deposition, I'll testify. But I want to be there when it happens. I want to see his face when it all comes out. I'll tell my lawyer, I said. She nodded and walked out. Not trying to be my friend, just someone with receipts and a grudge. And right then, that was exactly what I needed. Greg moved fast once he had Kendra's material to work with. He filed subpoenas for Northern Ridge's travel reimbursement records, company vehicle mileage logs, and booking records for the Pictured Rocks cabin property. He also requested calendar metadata from both Claire's and Wade's work accounts. The subpoena process wasn't instant. Wade's attorney fought every request, motions to quash, claims of corporate privilege, arguments about relevance. Each one took days to brief and schedule. The legal system runs on paperwork and patience, not anger. But the judge granted the discovery requests. The school pickup authorization, combined with the pattern allegations, created sufficient grounds. Because minor children were involved and the school records showed potential safety concerns, the judge also set an expedited hearing schedule. While the legal machinery churned, the social pressure intensified. Wade was a board member for the Marquette County Chamber of Commerce. He coached youth hockey. In a town of 20,000 people, Wade Mercer was a pillar, and I was a utility worker trying to take him down. People I'd known for years started acting different. Guys from my crew stopped inviting me to their weekend card games. One dad at Elsie's basketball told me I should get some help, and that Claire was really worried about me. A woman at the grocery store stopped me to say that Claire was such a sweet person, and every marriage has rough patches. The narrative was spreading exactly the way Claire designed it. Concerned wife, unstable husband, nothing to see here. I learned something important during that stretch. When you're telling the truth in a situation like this, nobody believes you at first. The liar has the advantage. They've had time to build the story, plant the seeds, recruit the allies. The truth is always playing catch-up, and nobody's cheering for you while you run. Then Wade tried his move. He showed up at the utility yard one afternoon, leaning against a new truck in the parking lot, waiting for me. Big smile, firm handshake offer. Chester, can we talk for a minute? Man to man? I didn't shake his hand. I stood 10 feet away with my hands in my jacket pockets and let him talk. He opened with concern, said he'd heard I was going through a rough time, said he understood how stressful marital problems could be, said there was nothing inappropriate about his relationship with Claire, that he'd only been trying to help with the kids because Claire asked. Then he pivoted to the offer. I know legal fees add up, Chester, and I know this kind of thing can get messy in ways nobody wants. What if we all just took a step back? I'll remove myself from the school contacts. Claire and I can establish some professional distance, and maybe we can all move forward without dragging this through the courts. Translation: drop it, and I'll throw you a bone. I looked at him for a long time, long enough that his smile started to crack around the edges. Then I said, you took my son to a doctor's appointment. You picked up my daughter from school, and you want to handle this man to man? I turned around and walked back into the yard. Heard him call my name once. Didn't turn around. That night, I called Greg and told him about the conversation. Greg said Wade approaching me directly while I was represented by counsel was a serious violation of litigation protocol. He added it to the file. The subpoenaed records started coming in over the next 2 weeks. The picture they painted was devastating. Over 3 years, Claire and Wade had taken 14 trips to the Pictured Rocks cabin, none of which corresponded to any official company retreat or event. The mileage reimbursements showed Wade's company vehicle logging routes to the cabin on weekends. Claire had told me she was at HR conferences downstate. The calendar metadata showed Wade blocking identical time slots marked development planning that overlapped perfectly with Claire's conference weekends, and then the expenses. Wade had been running dinners, cabin supplies, even gas for Claire's car through his corporate card, buried in line items labeled regional operations and stakeholder development. Northern Ridge's accounting was either negligent or complicit. Either way, it was a liability bomb. Greg arranged a meeting with Northern Ridge's corporate counsel, not to negotiate, to inform them that their GM had been funneling personal affair expenses through the company for years, and that the evidence was now part of a family court proceeding that could become public record. The room got very quiet after that. The DNA results came back on a Thursday. I picked up the envelope from the post office on my lunch break, sat in my truck in the parking lot of the dead mall on US 41, and opened it with hands that weren't entirely steady. Both children. Confirmed biological match to Chester Hale. Probability of paternity, 99.998%. I put my head back against the headrest and sat there for 15 minutes. The relief was physical, like a band around my chest finally loosening. Elsie had my eyes. Aaron had my jaw. They were mine. They'd always been mine. But until I saw it on paper, the doubt had been eating me alive. I'd been watching my kids over the past weeks looking for resemblances, hating myself for it, hating Claire for making me do it. That was over now. Depositions started in late February. Claire went first. Greg's questioning was methodical. He walked her through the school app entries. Claire tried to maintain her composure, but the specifics kept tripping her up. She'd claimed Wade was a casual family friend. Greg asked her to name 3 other casual family friends who had pickup authorization. She couldn't name one. He asked her to explain why she didn't add her own sister, who lived 15 minutes away, instead of her boss. She said her sister's schedule was unpredictable. Greg produced her sister's work schedule showing she had every Friday off. Then the travel records. Greg laid out the cabin bookings side by side with Claire's reported conference dates. 14 overlaps in 3 years. Claire claimed she occasionally used the company cabin for personal decompression after conferences. Greg asked which conferences. She named 3. He showed documentation that 2 of them had been held in cities 400 miles from the cabin, and the third had been canceled entirely. Then he pulled out the older records. Hotel expense reimbursements from 6 years ago. The year Claire started at Northern Ridge. Paired bookings in Traverse City, Mackinac Island, and Duluth. The pattern hadn't started 3 years ago. It had started almost from the beginning of her employment. The cabin trips were just where it escalated once they got comfortable. Claire's face went white when she saw the dates. She'd thought the older records were buried or purged. But Northern Ridge kept 7 years of expense documentation for tax purposes, and Greg had subpoenaed all of it. Her attorney tried to regroup during breaks, but the contradictions were stacking up faster than the explanations. By the end of the deposition, Claire's narrative had more holes than a transmission line after an ice storm. Wade's deposition was the following week. His attorney had clearly coached him to be vague and pleasant. It worked for the first hour. Then Greg introduced the expense records. Every corporate card charge, every mileage entry, every cabin booking, laid out on a timeline that synced perfectly with Claire's travel claims. But it was Kendra's sworn declaration that really rattled him. Greg read portions of it into the record, her account of Wade's pattern during their marriage, the same cabin, the same expense category tricks, the same development retreat calendar blocks. Wade's face went pale when he realized his ex-wife had provided documentation. He kept glancing at his attorney like he was waiting for an objection that never came. Wade tried the business development angle anyway. Greg asked him to identify which business was being developed during a Saturday night dinner for 2 at a restaurant in Munising. Wade said he didn't recall the specific purpose. Greg asked about 12 more entries. Wade didn't recall any of them. By the end, his attorney was doing most of the talking, and Wade's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. Then Claire made her desperate play. The week after depositions, her attorney filed an emergency motion claiming I'd violated custody boundaries and made threatening statements to the children about their mother. The motion requested immediate temporary sole custody. Greg called me the moment he saw it. "They're panicking," he said. "This is a Hail Mary." When did this alleged violation happen? The motion claimed it occurred on a Tuesday evening when I supposedly told the kids their mother was a liar and they should refuse to see her. I checked my records. That Tuesday evening, I'd been at Aaron's basketball practice from 5:30 to 7, then home cooking dinner. Aaron's coach, 3 other parents, and a gym sign-in sheet confirmed my whereabouts. Elsie had been at a friend's house until 6:45, confirmed by the friend's mother. Claire had fabricated an event on an evening with an airtight alibi. Not because she was stupid, but because she was desperate and rushing. And desperate people make timeline mistakes. Greg filed the counter evidence within 48 hours. The emergency motion was denied. The judge added a note to the file about concerns regarding the credibility of the move-in's claims. That note was the turning point. In family court, once a judge thinks you're a liar, you're done. Claire was done. Everything collapsed on them within 6 weeks of the failed emergency motion. Northern Ridge's corporate counsel completed their internal investigation and concluded that Wade Mercer had misused company resources for personal expenses totaling over $47,000 across 6 years. The company gave him 2 options: resign immediately with a non-disclosure agreement, or be terminated for cause with the findings referred to the board and potentially to law enforcement for fraud. Wade resigned. But in a town like Marquette, resigned fools nobody. The plant rumor mill had the full story within 48 hours, and the Chamber of Commerce quietly removed him from their board the following month. Wade Mercer didn't leave Marquette with a bang. He left with a moving truck on a gray Tuesday in April, driving south toward Lansing where his brother lived. The youth hockey team he'd coached got a form email saying he was pursuing other opportunities. The Chamber of Commerce website updated his board page to "position vacant" without any announcement. Kendra had been in the hallway the day of Wade's deposition. just like she'd promised. She didn't smile when he walked out looking 10 years older than when he'd walked in. Last I heard through Kendra, he was working as a regional sales rep for a plumbing supply company downstate. Not exactly the empire he'd built. Claire's situation was worse because she had more to lose and fewer places to hide. The custody evaluation went exactly how Greg predicted. The evaluator interviewed both of us, the kids, their teachers, and their school counselor. The report noted that I had been the consistent daily presence in the children's lives, handling school logistics, medical appointments, extracurricular schedules, and daily routines. Claire's work travel, now documented as frequently fabricated, had created extended absences that the kids had gotten used to, but the evaluator called out as checked-out parenting. The report also noted Claire's emergency motion and its subsequent denial, characterizing it as an attempt to manipulate custody proceedings through unsubstantiated claims. The evaluator's recommendation was clear: primary physical custody to me, with standard visitation for Claire. The financial side was ugly. Greg negotiated a settlement that gave me the house with Claire buying out her equity share over 3 years. I'd keep my pension. She'd keep hers. After Greg's fees, which were substantial but worth every dollar, and the cost of the DNA tests, the subpoena process, and the custody evaluation, I came out ahead, but not rich. I came out stable. The drone safety complaint against me was dismissed after a 2-week review found zero evidence of any operational violation. My certifications were reinstated, and my supervisor Dan told me privately that the complaints routing through Northern Ridge had raised eyebrows internally. We knew where it came from, he said. Just had to follow procedure. I was back on field duty and drone ops by mid-March. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday afternoon in May. But the real ending happened 3 days before that, in the conference room at Greg's office. Claire's attorney had requested a final settlement meeting. Standard stuff, usually. Iron out the last details, sign the papers, be done with it. But Claire had something else in mind. She showed up looking put together. Hair done, good coat. Her attorney laid out the terms we'd already agreed to. Then Claire asked to speak directly. She looked at me across the table and said, "Chester, I want to propose something. I'll sign everything today. No more delays, no more motions, no more fighting, but I need something from you." I waited. When people ask what happened, I need you to keep it vague. Say we grew apart. Say it was mutual. Don't bring up Wade. Don't mention the school records. Don't talk about the expense investigation. If anyone asks, we just didn't work out. She paused. I'll agree to your custody terms. I'll agree to the financial split. I'll even cover an extra 15% of the legal fee. All I'm asking is that you help me keep my professional reputation intact. I'm an HR director, Chester. If this gets out the way it actually happened, I'm done in this industry. There it was. I looked at her for a long time. She held my gaze. She wasn't ashamed. You put him on my kid's emergency contacts, I said. You let him pick up my daughter from school. You told a court I threatened my own children. And you want me to protect your image. She didn't blink. I want what's best for the kids. If their mother's career is destroyed, that affects them too. Tessa, sitting behind me, shifted in her chair. I leaned forward. Here's what I'll do, Claire. I'll agree to keep the details between our attorneys and out of the press. Not for you, for Elsie and Aaron, because they don't need to read about their mother's choices. But I'm not going to lie for you. I'm not going to say we grew apart. I'm not going to call it a misunderstanding. And if anyone asks me directly, I'm going to tell the truth. You can sign the papers as written, or you can keep fighting and lose worse. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something. She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. She signed the papers. Walking out of Greg's office into the May sunshine, Tessa fell into step beside me. Then she bumped my shoulder and said, "You did good." I picked up Aaron and Elsie from school that afternoon. We drove to the Presque Isle Park and sat on the rocks by the lake. Is it over? Elsie asked. Yeah, I said. It's over. Aaron turned around. So what happens now? I thought about it. The house that was mine now. The job I'd kept. The 2 kids sitting next to me who had my eyes and my jaw and my last name and my DNA, confirmed on paper, though I'd known it in my bones since the day each of them was born. Now we just keep going, I said. Same as before. I'll be here every morning. I'll be here every night. That part doesn't change. The summer was quiet. Aaron started mowing lawns for spending money. Elsie joined a reading program at the Peter White Library. Claire had the kids every other weekend per the agreement. She rented a small apartment on Ridge Street, found work at a staffing agency in Gwyn. Not HR director, entry level. I didn't feel sorry for her. Mostly I felt tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. The exhaustion that comes from 5 months of fighting for something that should never have been in question. My kids, my home, my name. Tessa checked in on me weekly. Sometimes she'd drive up from Escanaba on a Saturday and take Elsie to lunch while I watched Aaron's summer league games. 3 months later, I was running a drone inspection on a new transmission line. My phone buzzed. Beginning of the new school year, routine contact verification. I opened it. Emergency contact number 1, Chester Hale. Emergency contact number 2, Colleen Hale. Emergency contact number 3, Tessa Hale. My people. Only my people. I closed the app, launched the drone, and got back to work. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.